Hello everyone, and welcome to Harv's channel. I kidnapped him. That's why he's not here. No, but with all seriousness though, this is a guest upload from me, Eliraz from Team NDL, because we just wanted to do that for a channel anniversary of mine coming up in April 3rd, which I'm doing a lot of crazy things for the month from March 3rd to April 3rd, and it's called Fusion Month, and because of that there's also a Fusion deck right here. We did a skits together on the last video that he in on my channel around the same time, so you're more than welcome to check that out. I will leave the connected, I would say, tag for this, which is Fusion Month NDL around here. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun, and I think like just this channel have a lot of potential. I'm just going to say that out loud. I like Harv a lot. He's a good friend, YouTubing friend of mine, and I thought like I will try my best to help him as much as I can. Also, one last thing before we begin, or should I say two. The first one is this deck is kind of like more of a guide before Master Rule 5, because Master Rule 5 is going to change this deck a little bit. You're also going to have Anaconda and stuff like that, and some few things change, but this is kind of like playing with Master Rule 4 still, learning the deck, and then for the next 2 weeks, I recommend to you to try with Master Rule 5. So yeah, this is pretty much a deck that you might going to go in YGO Pro. And last thing, in very short time, Harvman, Dunk, and I, once again, if you don't know, in the last Versus video we did, or duel video we did, we're going to be part of something very big. So yeah, March 17th, guys. March 17th. It's not that long ago. It's not that long away. But let's just get started before I will waste more of your time. So, starting things off with the Predaplant monsters, we start with the 3 copies of Predaplant Orphis Scorpio. This one is probably the most important monster in the deck. You discard a monster, you get to search, or should I say, special summon a Predaplant from your deck, which is the most important one to summon with him is Darlingtonia Cobra, which once per duel, if it gets special summoned by a Predaplant monster effect, you get to add a fusion or polymerization spell from your deck to your hand, which is pretty nice. Then, the third most important monster in the deck, 3 copies of Clemasandu, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. This guy is very good. You're able to fusion summon. It's kind of a fusion summon by himself, but the other benefit is if your opponent have a Predator counter monster with a Predator counter on it, you get to use that monster for the fusion summon of a dark monster. So you can also use it for your own fusion summon. Also, it can only summon darks, but fusion summon darks. So you can also fusion summon Winda if you have the ability to. If you want to try Predaplant Shadows, it's also an option. Like I said, this is more of a basic build for them. But yeah, this card is great. And then we run 2 copies of this guy. Sphenodia, again, their names are a little bit hard to pronounce sometimes. But Sphenodia is just a really good one to just drop him on board, give an opponent monster a counter pretty easily, and that's it. Like, it's simple as that. Just put a counter, and then it's also an 18 beater, which can also get over things sometimes, and then you can get a special summon from the deck. So, yeah, it's pretty nice. Then 1 copy of Helium, whatever, the level 8, the new one. This one, if your opponent have a monster with a Predator counter, it's a free special summon, as well as it's a level 8, which is actually pretty important for your Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon, which is this guy. So it's kind of like not forcing you to use a monster from your extra deck, which is pretty nice. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Then you have 1 copy of Darkest Drusophilia Hydra, whatever, just Hydra, I guess. Hydra is just your mini kaiju, I guess, for your opponents. Like, if your opponent have a Predaplant counter, monster with a Predaplant counter, you tribute it, special summon it, which is pretty nice. It's also have another benefit, same goes with those two, but it's not really that important. And then 1 copy of Saraceniant. This one is kind of your hand trap against monsters, I guess, to special summon itself in defense. your opponent monster become also 0. It's pretty nice to deal with direct attacks. Also, when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, like on the field by a card effect or being destroyed by a battle, you get to add a Predaplant card from your deck to your hand. Not the best searcher though, which is kind of an issue with the deck until a particular other card, but we'll get to it. And that pretty much does it for the Predaplant monsters. We also run 3 copies of Longfire Blossom. I don't think I need to explain that one. Pretty self-explanatory. 2 copies of Ejimp Chain. This card right here is probably the card that makes the deck so much consistent. You have Ejimp Chain, which is searchable by Frightful Patchworks, and then you search this in a fusion spell. I was considering maybe bumping this up to 3 or at least adding Sabers, but the more I thought about this, having this card in multiples, or at least more than 2, and another Ejimp, it's kind of a break. Like, you'd rather see Patchworks and search than see that in your hand, discard and search. It's weird and complex. And then the last card in the main deck that is a monster, it's kind of more of a hand trap, but still, it's very useful because it's dark. Free DD Crow, because DD Crow is the best hand trap in my opinion right now in the format, and it's also dark, so again, another benefit. Then we'll move on to the spells. 3 copies of the best spell in the deck, which will be even better in Master Rule 5. 3 copies of Practice. You get to special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand and then search a Predap card from your deck to your hand, but you can only summon fusion monsters for the rest of the turn, which, again, once we'll get to Master Rule 5, it's not going to matter that much. It's actually going to be okay. But as it stands right now, it's one of those cards that, like, it's kind of iffy when you want to activate them. But like I said, Master Rule 5 make this card amazing. The other amazing card, at least right now for Master Rule 4, and I think is still pretty okay for Master Rule 5 because of its effect, it's Predaponics. Predaponics is a free special summon from your hand or graveyard for a level 4 or lower Predaplant monster. And, of course, it's have its effect negated, but who cares? You get another fusion material on board. Sure, you're also getting 800 points of damage during the standby phase, your standby phase, but it's not a hard once per turn, and there is ways to destroy this, so it's not really a big deal. I think this card has a lot of benefits, more than you think. Then 2 copies of Preda Running. This one is your Premature Burial, nothing more to explain about that. Wished I had an effect in the graveyard, but unfortunately doesn't. Then 1 copy of Preda Blast. This one, up to the number of Predap cards in your hand, you can target number of your opponent monsters on board, and put 1 Predap counter on each. One that, of course, up to the number. So if you have like 3 Predap cards and you have 4, you can only put on 3. And of course, they're getting the yada yada Predap counters thing. And then if a Predaplant monster would be destroyed by battle, or you can get to pretty much banish this. So that's pretty nice. So that's another add-in protection, I guess. It's not the strongest card, and that's why I run 1, because it's searchable by Preda Practice, but it's still pretty decent. Then the card I mentioned earlier, Free Patchworks. I don't think I need to explain. It's a great card. It's a +1. For your fusion spells, 3 Super Poly. It's the best fusion spell in the game. It's a fusion spell that I would say, like, it's kind of like a deck I think like kind of built for this. Like, it's kind of built around this, I guess, at least recently. This is a really great card. You get to fusion summon during your opponent's turn, and there are a lot of cards in the extra deck that just, oh, I can just fusion darks. It's pretty simple. Then 2 Polymerization as searchable for Patchworks, and just generally it's good to have. And 2 copies of Instant Fusion. I don't think I need to see more of those. And then for the last card, 1 copy of Predaplanning. Predaplanning is great. This one is pretty much your Predablast during your turn. You want to search this during your turn. If you don't want to search anything else with Predaplanning. Because this send a Predator Plant monster from your deck to the graveyard, which was the time you're going to search one of the, you send the Hydra, and then you get to place 1 Predator counter on each monster in your opponent's control, and it doesn't target, which is pretty nice. And then the other effect is that if you fusion summon, which also again Super Poly could be a thing, you get to pop a card by banishing this from the graveyard. So that's really, really nice. So that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Now we'll move on to the extra deck. 1 copy of Greedy, 2 copies of Thrift Pendulum, 2 copies of Starving Venom, 2 copies of this fellow right here. I think I'll just go with those 2 right here. And then 2 copies of Chimera Rafflesia. So let's get over each and every single one of them. So Chimera Rafflesia, giving you the ability to banish any monsters that have a lower level than it. So every monster that have a level 1, because of the Predaplant effect, like of the Predaplant counters, it's get banished immediately with this effect. And then when she's attacking, or it's attacking, it can make itself gain 1,000 attack and opponent lose 1,000 attack. Opponent monster lose 1,000 attack. So it becomes 3,500. That makes an opponent monster smaller. And then if it gets sent to the graveyard, during the next standby phase, you get to add to your hand a fusion spell, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like like Darlingtonia Cobra, which is pretty nice. This one give you the ability once per turn to put a Preda counter on any monster you want, and then you, at least from your opponent's side, and then you also have the ability as like a stand-up ability, like permanent. It's pretty much negate the effect of monsters that have a Preda counter. So essentially this one is your negation, I like to say. It's pretty good. This one is pretty mandatory. Everybody know what it does. I don't think I need to explain. This one requires 3 monsters like this, but requiring additional more. And it has the ability that is like, if your opponent special summon a monster from the extra deck, while you control this fusion summon card, you get to negate the activation by, you get the activation, which is pretty cool. And then another thing is that if it's in your graveyard, and or should I say, and your opponent control a monster with a Predator counter, it's kind of like Hydra. It's coming back, which is pretty nice. And then it's gaining the original attack of monster on the field with Predator counter, so it's also kind of an OTK enabler. This one requires level 8, but it has the following effect. It's first off, it's give you the ability to target one face-up monster on the field and change that attack to 0. The other thing is that the target effects are negated, and then the third effect is that if it's to get destroyed by and sent to the graveyard, you get to pretty much commit a dark hole. It's pretty simple. And then you can banish a level 8 or higher monster, except himself, which is a dark, and then special summon this. Actually, including his name, but not itself. It's pretty simple. It's not really that hard to understand. Sometimes I just need to explain this. But, yeah. So that's pretty much for the Predator plants. You have 9 of them, or at least 9 related fusion monsters. And then the last fusion monster, which is the instant fusion target, Thousand Eyes Restrict. Pretty simple on that one. And then for the link monsters, this one's supposed to be Anaconda. Once we'll get it, but for the time being, Beat Cop is not a bad option with 2 monsters. 1 copy of Jasmine, because Jasmine is just a nice for your plants. You tribute something, you get to special something else. 1 decode actually proved to be really useful because it's really easy to go into, and it could be up to a 3300, which also kind of like negation of targeting effects, which is pretty nice. Unicorn to spin something back, and then Boral's Sword for OTK. And that's pretty much does it for that deck profile. So again, hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe to Harv if you haven't already. This guy, in my opinion, is really great. Be sure to maybe even hit me if you have the ability to, and you enjoy also my content. And just check out the Fusion Month, because you're going to see a little bit more from me and him as well up in the month continuing. So, yeah. March 17th is getting really, really close, guys. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.